For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Alabama seek recognition?
I oppose the amendment.
We can get the House in order. We will proceed after the House is in order and conversations are taken off the House floor. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I oppose this amendment because it's a mere distraction. It is an attempt to politicize the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by interjecting campaign finance and settlement terms into a civil rights legislation. If the Republicans were really serious about voting rights, they would actually be willing to come to the table and talk about how we can fully restore Section 4 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Leave it up to our colleagues across the aisle to interject money and finance into civil rights law. What has been lost today in this debate is the very heart of this bill. It is the central meaning of the bill. Let's not forget the brave patriots of the civil rights and voting rights movement who marched, prayed, died for the right to vote. These foot soldiers for equality, like our very own John Lewis, were ordinary citizens who dared to achieve extraordinary social change by forcing this nation to live up to its ideals of equality and justice for all. We know, Mr. Speaker, that the price of freedom is not free. It has been paid for and bought by those brave foot soldiers so that one day a little black girl from Selma, Alabama, could one day sit in this august body. I know I am not the only black and brown colleague of ours that owes our very presence in this chamber to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Mr. Speaker, old battles have become new again. We fight for the same equity that these foot soldiers fought for in Selma. Progress is elusive. Every generation must fight to maintain the progress that we've had and to seek to advance it. Since the Supreme Court's decision in 2013 in Shelby versus Holder, states across this country have enacted harsh measures that make it more difficult to vote. Mr. Speaker,
we can have order in the House. Please take our conversations off the House floor so we shall proceed. Gentlewoman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I dare say that Selma is still now. Since the Shelby decision, 25 states have put in stricter voter restrictions laws. Selma is still now, because since the Shelby decision, 12 states have laws making it harder for citizens to register and stay registered. Selma is now. Since the Shelby's decision, 10 more states have made it more difficult for early and absentee voting. While today there are no poll taxes or literacy tests, these modern-day barriers to voting are no less discriminatory or suppressive than those old practices. Voting rights should be a nonpartisan issue. And the fact that in this amendment they would try to politicize voting rights, we should all be appalled by that. Voting rights have been always very nonpartisan. And it used to be that the Voting Rights Act passed overwhelmingly with Republicans and Democrats. In fact, the VRA was reauthorized 5 times, yes, under Republican and Democratic presidents. So what's changed? I asked my colleagues across the aisle, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of letting more Americans voting? Why are you afraid to let more Americans vote? Is it because your own political interests are only realized when you limit access to the ballot box? I say shame on you. Shame on you. Could it be that what we need more than anything else is to look at our North Star? That is John Lewis. Mr. Lewis, we are all honored every day to be able to call you colleague. And the reality is that what happened on that bridge in Selma, Alabama in 1965 is still occurring today. If one person who's an American who is a voter is not allowed to vote, it goes to the very heart of the integrity of all of our elections. We should all want to make sure that every American can vote. So let us make sure that we remember what Elijah Cummings would say. He would say, we are better than this. We are better than this. We are better than having an amendment that deals with politicizing Civil Rights Act is appalling. I ask my colleagues to vote no on the amendment and to remember the words of another civil rights activist, Amelia Boynton Robinson, who also was bludgeoned on that bridge with John Lewis in 1965, who came to this chamber in 2015 as my special guest at the State of the Union. Many of you on both sides of the aisle were willing to host her. I say to you what she said. When people said that I stand on your shoulders, she said, get off my shoulders. Do your own work. I say now, Miss Amelia, we're doing our own work because we're voting to restore the Voting Rights Act of 1965.